Right. So last week we discussed our question related to the big match 1983 by Yasmin Gunaratna in the literature class. So before coming to this particular poem, if you can remember, I gave you some introduction about the poem because this is the biggest or else the longest poem that we have in the syllabus. As a result of that, I personally believe you have to have some kind of understanding about this poem. That is number one. Number two is this poem is actually related to one of the significant events that actually occurred in political history of Sri Lanka. As a result of that, if you don't have that proper background to understand this political scenario, you will not be able to understand this poem, right? Because even in the poem, if you refer to the poem very carefully, there are certain years that you have to pay your attention. If you don't know the importance of that particular years, you can't understand the poem properly. So as a result of that, I wanted to give some kind of idea about that as well. So the question is about how this particular poem discusses about the racial conflict that occurred in our country. So Big Match 1983 is a poem actually written by Yasmin Gunaratna. The incident was actually based on the communal clash which occurred in Sri Lanka in 1983, which is known to be the Black July. Why it is known to be the Black July? Because it actually created a black mark to our country, a black reputation to our country. A lot of other countries denied or refused to help our country, or else most of the tourists, they did not want to visit our country because of this communal clash. For more than 3 days, it continued. As a result of that, a lot of property was destroyed. A lot of innocent people were killed. Some of them actually moved on to other countries. Still they are in those countries and still the problem is not solved, right? So this is what we discussed. So that background I explained you. Without having that background, I think it will be a little bit difficult to understand the point. Now we will move on to the question. Last week we discussed about the introductory paragraph. I gave you some information about the poet and the poem, the basic idea of the poem, the summary of the poem, and today we are going to start the answer, the rest of the answer. If you pay your attention towards the question, right, the question clearly suggests, if you pay your attention towards the question, this is the question that we have been discussing. Does the poem Big Match 1983 expose the racial conflicts in the country? So I have colored that in yellow because that is the part that you have to pay your attention. Now, make sure to understand, my dear students, when it comes to English literature, you have to read the essay type question very carefully. It doesn't matter that you take some time. That's totally fine, because reading is something that you have to do very carefully. Because if you did not understand the question properly, your answer will not be a successful one. In order to write a successful answer, once you have finished writing, you cannot go back. Can you understand? Once you have finished writing, you cannot go back, right? So before you are going to write an answer, there should be a clear idea. This is what I am going to write. This is the question is all about. I am not going to write a summary about this poem. I am not going to write everything that I know about this particular poem. I am going to write according to the question. Most of the students, they study really well, but the problem is they don't write according to the question. So that is why I told you to read the question several times and try to understand what is the question is all about. So in this particular question, they have directly asked about the racial conflicts. So yes, in this poem, we discussed about the racial conflict and certain repercussions occurred in our motherland because of this racial conflict. Still in Sri Lanka, we can see some of the repercussions of this particular incident. We will discuss about them one by one. If you have any questions, make sure to send me a message through chat section, right? Okay, so we will move on. I have discussed everything. So we have to start from here. So this particular stanza I have taken here because it is very much important to understand the racial conflicts. Because first and foremost, Puta, we should know how this started, how this problem actually started. Now, don't forget the word racial conflict. So first and foremost, we should understand how this racial conflict actually started. Who started this problem, right? So that history, without knowing that history, we cannot understand this particular poem and this particular incident as well, because this poem is a political poem, right? This poem deals with political history of Sri Lanka. If you don't have a proper idea, because I was not born there at that time period. Even you were not born. So we have to find out what is the history. We have to go through the history and we have to find out what actually happened. Don't forget the word racial conflict. Our entire answer is based on the word racial conflict. Look at this stanza. This stanza will explain you how this problem actually started, who backed up this problem, and how this problem actually turned into flame, or else how this problem became, how this problem achieved that climax at the end of the day in 1983, which actually resulted in a black mark, or else providing a black mark to our motherland. Now, this part is very important where we talk of 48 and 56 of freedom and the treacherous politics of language. See, the first sparks of this hate fanned into flame in 1958. This is where all the racial conflicts started. Now, don't forget the word. I'm telling you again, don't forget the word. We are writing according to that particular phrase, racial conflict. The poem discusses about racial conflict. So we have to always prove the fact that racial conflict. Can you understand? There can be other points. Now you may say that, sir, apart from racial conflict, there are so many points, sir, that I can write. I can write about violence. I can write about disparity among the people, right? I can write about religion. I can write about torturing, right? I can write so many things, but don't write. The thing is, actually, our question is based on one particular word. That is the word racial conflict. So when we are writing within the given limited amount of time period, write according to the question. I personally know you can write a hell of a lot. I know that you have a lot of points, but don't write. Most of the students don't get marks because they are not writing according to the question. Always, when you are writing an answer, always keep that in your mind, racial conflict. Now, that is the nuclear word that we have to keep in our mind. So we have to construct our answer based on that nuclear word. That is something very much important, right? Okay. Now, this is where all the racial conflict started when Mr. Bandaranayake introduced the Sinhala Only Act in 1956. After the independence in 1948, most of the minority groups were under the influence that they were discriminated based on language because they faced difficulties when dealing with their day-to-day work from Sinhala language. Now, what actually happened? You learn history as a subject. I think like that, right? I think, right? So 1948, we discussed about the independence. 1948, February 4th, Sri Lanka gained independence from the British regime. But according to the poetess, she always discusses the idea that we did not gain the complete freedom because even the British regime actually went out from the country. The country was governed by a set of authoritative people who were actually came under the influence of these British people who went to Oxford University, Cambridge University. Most of them actually studied in Britain. So they were actually influenced by this British culture. So they are the ones who came to rule our country, right? At the end of the day, we can't directly say that Sri Lanka actually received the independence, but it is kind of a dominion independence, half independence, right? Even though the British people actually went away from the country, they went away from our country, set of people who came to govern our country, they are, even though they are Sinhalese, but they actually had that Western influence. Don't forget that, right? Most of them, if you take what you call people like D.S. Senanayake, SWRD Bandaranayake, these people, they were studied in most of the universities, such as what you call University of Cambridge, University of Oxford. So they had that Western influence. So they worked according to the British regime. Even though they are not here, the people who governed us, they actually loved the British culture and British tradition. They wanted to continue that. If you go to SWRD Bandaranayake's, if you listen to SWRD Bandaranayake's speech, you will realize what kind of beautiful accent that he has got when it comes to English, right? So he is a very fluent English speaker, but it is a problem. It is kind of a shock to us even why this particular person did not allow most of the Sinhala people to learn English as a language. Now, as an example, he can deal with English language quite well, but he did not allow average normal human beings to learn English as a language. Why is that? Because he wanted to maintain his class. So the 1948 is very important, even though we discussed that we received that independence. Doesn't matter whether you are a minority or majority. According to the poetess, we did not receive the complete independence, right? The reason is that the country was actually governed by set of Sinhalese who were influenced by this British culture and tradition. That is number one. Number two, we discuss about 56. Why 1956 is very much important? Because SWRD Bandaranaike, he is the one who actually initiated this Sinhala Only Act, right? So most of the people thought that he initiated this act because he is a Sinhala person. So he loved our language and culture. So as a result of that, he wanted to promote this. Most of the majority of the Sinhala people, they thought like that. But the reality was totally different, right? He wanted to get the maximum vote of Sinhala majority. As a result of that, he made Sinhala as the official language. So if he made Sinhala as the official language, he should also use Sinhala as the official language. But he did not use like that, right? If you listen to him, if you go through his interviews, as I told you, you can clearly understand he is a very powerful, very eloquent speaker when it comes to English language. Even his children, right? Chandrika Bandaranaike, Andhra Bandaranaike, they studied in foreign universities and they are really good when it comes to English. But this particular person did not allow normal citizens of the country to learn English as a subject, because if they learn English as a subject, what will happen? They can't maintain their class, right? Their social class, right? So both will be equal. So that was the propaganda, that was the idea that he had. But majority of the Sinhalese were under the influence that he is a hero because he is the one who made Sinhala as the official language, and they were really proud about it. As a result of that, what actually happened? Most of the minority people who always communicated with Tamil language, who always communicated with other languages, they could not communicate, they could not do their day-to-day work, because in most of the places, Sinhala was the official language. Even in police stations, if you go to magistrate court, district court, court of justice, if you go to all the other places, what actually happened? The medium of instruction was Sinhala. So a person who came from Jaffna, a person who came from a Tamil background, that particular person could not explain his problem to the police station. So this became a huge problem. And afterwards, what actually happened? Minority people thought that they were under the impression that, okay, now this created some kind of a discrimination, right? So there is some kind of a majority. So the main language is the language of the majority. We were discriminated. We were not given an equal chance to express our feelings. That is one of the fundamental rights. So as a result of that, what actually happened? In 1958, first communal clashes occurred in Sri Lanka based on language and religion. Can you understand? First communal clashes occurred in Sri Lanka. 1956, Mr. Bandaranaike introduced Sinhala Only Act. In 1958, what happened? In 1958, first communal clashes occurred in Sri Lanka. It continued for a certain time period, but not that much violent when it comes to 1983. So this problem actually came into a climax in 1983, where the huge destruction, violence actually occurred in 1983. That is why she uses the word fan into flame in 1958, right? So that started in 1948, where the independence, actually the Dominion independence was given. 1956, actually the political propaganda actually created the Sinhala as the official language. In 1958, actually first political problem, or else the first communal clashes occurred in Sri Lanka. And finally, the biggest violence actually occurred in 1983, right? The Black July, right? That is how the process worked, right? So it did not occur, within a day, right? For a long period of time, these minority people actually had this problem. So this racial violence is actually created by politicians for their political advantage. None of these average human beings, they did not want to have any racial violence in Sri Lanka. Now, if you take Tamils and Sinhalese, they celebrate Sinhala and Tamil New Year without having any problem, right? We don't have any problem with Muslim people, or else Islam, the people who believe in Islam, right? So this was actually created by politicians. So first and foremost, you have to explain that the racial violence is actually created. This is the way that racial violence is actually created, that history is properly explained in this stanza. So you have to explain that. Without explaining that, you can't come to the violence. First and foremost, you have to show how this racial violence started. This is where everything started. So basically, these 3 years are very much important. Can you understand? Very good. 1948, Sri Lanka was given the Dominion independence. 1956, SWRD Bandaranaike introduced the Sinhala Only Act. 1958, first communal clashes occurred in Sri Lanka based on language and religion. It fanned into flame. It grew to the next level in 1983. So this is how the problems actually started. So in the question, you have to explain that. Without explaining that, you can't move forward. Suddenly, you can't say that this is a racial violence. So two people got together and they fought each other. You can't say like that. You have to explain how this started. Then you can move on to the violence, right? Different levels of violence, how this actually affected for children, how this affected for all old people, how this affected for youth, how this problem affected to people's day-to-day lives, right? Likewise, then you can move on. But first and foremost, you have to explain about this part. So hurry up and write down. Please pass me a message if you have finished. If you can't understand, please ask without having any second thoughts. Please make sure to ask, right? Then and there, finish it off, Puda. Don't wait for the recording. I will give you the recording. That is not a problem, but make sure to participate for the class and make sure to write and finish it off then and there, right? There are two advantages. Number one, you don't have to spend time to go through the recording. Number two, you can improve your speed, right? You can improve your speed. You can write fast and you can check whether I can survive, right? So I have always told you, my dear students, 2022 ordinary batch, I have already told you, you have to write 2.5 pages with 4 quotations, right? Within 25 to 30 minutes. So it will be a difficult task if you don't practice. If you don't practice, that will be a problem. So make sure to practice that, right? So you have to practice that. It will not come spontaneously, right? It will not come spontaneously. So you have to practice it. The more you practice, the more you can learn. That is what happens. Okay, hurry up and write down. If you can't understand, please ask, because this is one of the difficult poems, one of the difficult poems that you have in the syllabus. So first I explained how this communal clash started. Who are the ones who started this problem, right? So they are the ones who should be responsible, the politicians. That is what the poet openly says. They are the ones who started this problem, right? All the politicians. Why did they do like that? Because they wanted to take the maximum advantage, right? Even today in Sri Lanka, we can see number of political parties, right? Bodubala Sena, based on Buddhism. Ilangai Tamil Arasu Katchi, based on Tamil, right? That is again what you call racism, right? Or else we call racial conflict, right? Racial, right? Tamil, right? Bodubala Sena, Buddhist. Then we have what do you call most of the other Islam groups. We have Sri Lanka Muslim Congress, right? Muslim. So now you can understand why they have divided like that, because that is how they are going to survive, right? They have to promote religion and race. Through that only they can get the votes. Can you understand? That is the only method that these politicians can survive, right? Otherwise, don't think that these people are in love with their race or religion, right? Nobody does not have that kind of ideology. Each and every person wanted to promote race and religion, because then they can get the maximum political advantage. That is what SWRD Bandaranaike did. He wanted to make Sinhala as the official language, not because he loved Sinhala language or Sinhala culture or Sinhala community, but because he wanted to take the majority of Sinhala votes, and he did that. At the end of the day, he became the president, right? So majority of the Sinhalese, they voted him because they thought that he is kind of a patriotic person who loved his motherland. Right now we realize that what kind of foolish act actually done by him, because in Sri Lanka, when it comes to people, when it comes to citizens, we have multicultural, multi-ethnic society. So in that type of society, we can't say that Sinhala is the official language. Fortunately, in today's constitution, Sinhala and Tamil, both Sinhala and Tamil are known as the official languages of our motherland. If you can't use Sinhala and Tamil in a particular situation, English can be taken as the linked language. That is actually inserted to the constitution as well, right? That is actually included in the constitution as well, right? So shall we move on to the next part? Please pass me a message. Now we started how we now we discuss how we started this particular problem, how this problem actually came into existence, right? That is what we discussed. Okay, Yehansa is completed. What about the other students? Did you complete? Shall we move on to the next one? Please pass me a message. Okay, right, very good. Okay, right, write down, hurry up. Please make sure to hurry up and write down now. Because while my explanation is going on, you have to write down. Otherwise, it's a problem, because like time is important now. You can be a really brilliant student, but if you have the problem of time management, you can't survive. Believe me, you can't survive, right? Because you will not be able to write fast. Basically, you have only 30 to 25 minutes to write one question, right? When 30 minutes are if you did not write within that 30 minutes, whether you like it or not, you have to shift to the other question, right? Can't help, right? So you have to move. That is what you have to understand. So hurry up and pass me a message if you have finished. Right, okay. We will move on to the next part. Right, okay. So we will move on to the next part. I hope you guys have completed, right? Okay. Then what we are going to discuss, I hope that you guys can see the screen. You can write down, right? While you are writing, you can listen to my explanation as well. So the both work will be done. So try to write down. So we are going to continue from here, right? So we discussed the Dominion independence we gained in 1948. What do you mean by Dominion independence? The half independence. Even though the British regime actually went back to their motherland, right? Still, the Sri Lanka was governed by set of Sri Lankans, right? Set of Sri Lankans who were influenced by the Western tradition, Western culture, right? Did not solve the problems related to the minority groups, even though these people said that they are going to solve most of the problems related to these minority groups. They did not solve these problems. They did not solve, right? So as an example, the fundamental rights of these Tamil people, all these Muslim people, Burgher people, they did not pay any attention to these problems. As a result of that, what happened? These minority people thought that they are being discriminated. They are being discriminated. Nobody is going to pay attention to our needs and wants, our fundamental rights. So why should we live in this country? That is where most of the problems actually start. On the other hand, still the country was governed by British regime. That is important, right? Even though the British regime, even though the British governors actually left the country was still governed by them, right? But they have not done that directly, but indirectly, the country was still governed by them. That was the reality, whether we like it or not, right? The people who came to the power, they were under the influence of the British regime. The opportunistic politicians knew most Sinhalese will be illusioned by the patriotism, and as expected, they were driven by emotions. Opportunistic politicians, SWRD Bandaranaike, opportunistic politician, he understood that, okay, if I made Sinhala as the official language, the majority of people will vote me. They will think that I am a patriotic person. Okay, I love my motherland. Even Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa also did the same thing. I am not going to criticize him. He has done a great service to our motherland. There is no doubt about that. But in order to retain in power, he also did the same thing. What are the weapons that he used? He used religion net. He used religion net race, right? If you can remember all the Vandakottu and all these Bodubala Sena and everything, if you can remember, right, you will understand that in order to retain in power, he also did the same thing, right? We can't say no, right? Because we have seen them. We have seen them. We have experienced them. That is what politicians do, right? Because they knew that people will be emotional when it comes to their religion. when it comes to their race, right? So that is what even British governors also did, if you can remember, right? Can you remember the what do you call divide and rule method introduced by British governors, right? If you have done history, you may have come across that, right? Divide and rule, right? Divide and rule, because they knew that Sri Lankans are actually very much emotional when it comes to religion and race. That is something natural, right? Okay, we will move on from there. The opportunistic politicians knew most Sinhalese will be illusioned by the patriotism, and as expected, they were driven by emotion. As a result of that, first communal clashes occurred in Sri Lanka in 1958 based on language, race, and religion. These minority groups, Tamils, Burghers, Muslims, they thought that, okay, we are being discriminated because we were not given equal chance to explain our problems, our issues to these people. As a result of that, what actually happened, right? We were discriminated. We were discriminated. So we should start some kind of what do you call rebellious act against this. That is the only way that we can get that justice. We can receive that justice. This racial conflict grew to the next level when the brutality continued for 3 days in 1983. Right. So this is where all the communal clashes started. The problem, the clash actually which occurred in 1958 grew to the next level, when the brutality continued for 3 days in 1983 in the month of July, right? It continued for 3 days, right? This incident added a black to our nation, and the incident is known to be Black July. The communal clash, the entire poem is all about the communal clash, right? That is what actually happened. This incident added a black mark to our nation, and the incident is known to be Black July. This is the political history of the racial conflict, which was constructed by opportunistic politicians to receive more votes from the different ethnic groups. Racism is used as a weapon in politics. Racism is used as a weapon in politics. That is what Muslim politicians do. That is what Buddhist politicians do. That is what Tamil politicians do, right? They try to get the maximum advantage from their race by telling that you are not protected. If you want protection, vote us. The majority of Sinhalese are in danger. The Muslims, or else the people who believe in Islam, right? They are trying to overrule our country, right? If you want to protect our country, if you want to protect our Sinhala Buddhist nation, what you should do? You should vote us. That is how they took our votes. They did not took our votes. They actually stole them from us, right? They actually stole them, right, from us. Now we realize after this Aragalaya, what actually happened? People realized the reality. People realized the reality, right? They understood that, okay, these politicians are actually trying to make some kind of dividends among us. Sinhala, Muslim, Tamil, some kind of dividends. They created this dividends because it will be very much easy for them to rule the country. It will be very much easy for them to rule the country. So during the Aragalaya, what actually happened? All the groups actually got together and they fought against corruption. They fought against the corruption, right? For the first time in Sri Lanka, we chased away a president. We chased away a president. How? How did we do that? Right? Unity. We did that through unity, right? That is what actually happened. So this is what the racial conflict, racism is actually used as a weapon in politics. This is how everything started. So you have to inform this. If this poem is about racial violence, first and foremost, you have to tell them that why it is a poem based on racism. Why? How this problem actually started. Then after that, you can move on to the repercussions. What kind of violent acts performed at this time period, at that time. These are the things that you have to pay your attention. If you can't understand, පුතේ දෙපාරක් හිතන්න එපා අහන්න. බය වෙලා වගේ ඉන්න එපා. තේරෙන්නේ නැත්නම් අහන්න දිමත් net mirror Royal Institute. දිමත් තේරෙනවද පැහැදිලිද ඔයාලට? එවුමි අපේ එවුමි දුවට පැහැදිලිද? net mini පුතා pet meter තේරෙනවද? pet me. This is not a ධම්ම sermon නා ධර්මදේශනාවක් වගේ අහන් ඉන්න එපා. තේරෙන්නේ නැත්නම් නෑ කියන්න. මුල ඉඳන් කියලා දෙනවා. බොරුවට සම්බන්ධ වෙලා නිකන් ඔය අහන් ඉන්න එපා. සල්ලි දීලා එන්නේ. Right? Get the maximum out of that. තේරෙන්නේ නැත්නම් නෑ කියන්න. If you can't understand, sir, I can't understand. Can you explain කියලා අහන්න. Right. Shall we move on to the next part? Did you write? Please pass me a message if you have finished. Okay, right. I have given you time to write because it will be easy, right? So I am not coming here. If I come here, the entire screen will be, what do you call it? It will be a interruption for you guys. So I will not come here. So you guys can go through the note. Then you can write the note at the same time. Make sure to listen. Make sure to listen, right? Then you know that, okay, this is what he explained, right? Simple. Okay, now we will move on to the next part. This is what the poetess discusses about throughout the poem. It is all about the authenticity of the poetess when it comes to her writing is quite admirable. Each stanza, she discussed the repercussions. Repercussions means, Uta, the negative results. Repercussions means negative results. Now, as an example, today we are suffering from a, what do you call, economic crisis because of the that is the result actually because of the actions that we did. We believed certain politicians and we provided our sovereignty towards them. As a result of that, corruption occurred all around the country. Now, as civilians, we are suffering. Can you understand the repercussions, right? That is what we call repercussions, negative results, right? So, repercussions of the racial conflict, the repercussions resulted in brutality and inhumanity among the general public. Now, what actually happened as a result of this communal clash, what actually happened, the repercussions were terrible, right? The repercussions resulted in brutality and inhumanity among the general public. So, general public had to face a lot of crucial circumstances due to this particular problem. Most of the family members had to sacrifice their relationships as a result of their ethnicity. If you are a Muslim, if you are a Tamil, if you are a Buddhist, sometimes you had to sacrifice yourselves in order to provide protection to your family members, right? I have given an example here. Please check the example. I sent Padmini and the girls to a neighbor's house. Who? Me. Oh, I am doing fine. I always was. Now, this is actually said by a father. This particular idea is said by a father where he says, I sent Padmini and the girls to a neighbor's house. So he did not think about his protection. He thought about the protection of his wife and children. Can you understand how this particular ethnic problem divided social relationships? A father could not survive with his family members inside the house because these people will come and kill him if he is a Tamil person, if he is a Buddhist person, right? So because of the communal clash, they lost their social life, their family life. These are the repercussions, negative results, right? Negative results. So people cannot survive. So this father says, I sent Padmini and the girls to a neighbor's house. Now he did not go. He sent Padmini and the girls to neighbor's house. It clearly shows us there was a problem, there was a challenge to most of the people at that time period to provide protection to women because most of the women were brutally raped and killed. So as a father, he wanted to protect the family. I sent Padmini and the girls, not the boys, right? And the girls to a neighbor's house. So this particular father, right, he thought about his family and he thought that it is okay. Who, me? So we asked the question, you said Padmini and the girls to a neighbor's house. What about you? You are not going. Are you not going? Are you not going there? You don't want to survive? Don't you? You don't want to survive? No, 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 no. Who, me? I am totally fine. I am totally fine. I am doing fine. I always was. I can die. I can sacrifice myself. Right? What I bother is actually about the protection of my family. Can you understand? Right? So some people, they sacrifice themselves for the betterment of their family. They wanted to save their family. As a result of that, they sacrifice themselves. Due to the ethnic conflict, different ethnicities were distant from each other. This is reflected the poetess by referring to the telephone lines. They try to save their neighbors as much as possible. So it should be they try, it should not be they try. There is a grammar mistake. They try to save their neighborhood as much as possible. So this is a different part. This particular explanation refers to this one. This particular explanation and the quotation will be there in the next slide, right? So don't misunderstand. This one related to this part, right? Okay, so hurry up and write down. Please pass me a message. So now I am showing you the repercussions or else the negative results of the racial violence. Hurry up and write down. Please pass me a message if you did not understand. Okay, my dear students, did you finish? Shall we move on to the next part? Right, okay, Hansa has finished. What about the other students? I have given you enough time to write down. Then and there, finish it off. I am telling you for the betterment of yourselves. Because if you go through the recording, then you have to watch this again. It will take some time. So you are wasting your time. Don't do that. Then and there, finish it off. Then it would be much more easy, right? And try to understand. This is what I am going to write. Right? Understand the poem as well. So when we are writing answers, I will give you an entire description about the entire poem. Before writing an answer, we should know what is the poem is all about, right? If we don't have that mentality, we can't write, right? The quotations are not enough. You should read the background of the poem. Why did this particular poet or the poetess actually write this kind of poem? What is the background? What is the experience, right? What kind of message this poet or the poetess is trying to give? You have to have that in your mind. Then only you can write a successful answer, right? Okay. Shall we move on, Puta? How many of you are writing still? That one, Puta, I can't help Sumeya. Without explaining, Puta, I can't give you right. You can go through the YouTube, Puta. I have to explain. If you are, what you call, going out of your mind like that, I can't help in that. I'm really sorry. Explanation is a must. I have to give that. Otherwise, we can't. Right. So we will move on to the next slide. I hope you have finished. Right. You can refer to the recording, Buddha. No worries. Okay, we will hurry up. The ones who are actually distracted with my voice, go through the recording and complete the notes. I'm telling you for the betterment of yourself. Otherwise, you have to go through again, but doesn't matter. You can go through the recording. Right. Hurry up. Please hurry up, Vidula. Right. Okay. Right, okay, right. Next one. There is nothing you can do to help us, but it is good to know some lines haven't yet been cut. So the last line is important because when the particular person's house is faced with a threat, he gets a call. Sometimes he may be a Tamil person. He gets a call from a Sinhala neighbor. Just imagine. So that particular person asked the question, how are you? I heard that this kind of violent incidents are taking place. Did you survive? So that particular person gives the answer like this, right? What did he say? There is nothing you can do to help us. Thank you so much for calling. Thank you so much for calling. I really appreciate that because at least you called. At least you called and asked what actually happened. It is good to know some lines haven't yet been cut. When it comes to the word lines, basically we have two different ideas here. Number one, the telephone line, right? Still the telephone lines are working. Number two, the line which created that neighborhood. Whatever the communal clashes occurred in Sri Lanka, whatever the plans made by these opportunistic politicians, our neighborhood, Sinhala, Tamil, Muslim, Burgher neighborhood still remains. That line is not yet disconnected. We have still that line. That line is not disconnected. We still survive. Thank you so much for calling. Even though the majority of people are trying to kill us, I'm really happy you are not doing the same thing. You are not doing the same thing. I'm really happy, right? I'm really happy. So there also we can see some kind of connection. We have negative and positive repercussions as well. Now this is something positive, where when the majority of people are trying to kill all these Tamil people, when the majority of them are trying to kill all these Sinhala people, some Tamils, some Sinhalese, they try to protect their neighbors as well. So there is some kind of positivity as well. There is some kind of positivity as well, right? So I know that an individual person can't come and save me and my family. But thank you so much for calling. Thank you so much for calling, because now I know that this is a problem actually created by the politicians, right? There are some genuine people who did not care about this race or religion and caste. There are some genuine people, right? So that is what he explained. The poet discusses about the ethnic conflict by referring to symbols. Don't forget the word ethnic conflict. We are writing about ethnic conflict. Don't forget that, right? The poet discusses about the ethnic conflict by referring to symbols. Different cities were taken it should be taken, there's a grammar mistake. Cities were taken symbolically to show the spread of ethnic conflict. The ethnic conflict actually dispersed everywhere, scattered everywhere, every single place for more than 3 days, right? For more than 3 days, violence can be seen, right? So the police, even though they tried to stop that, they couldn't, right? So more than 3 days, violence actually continued in Sri Lanka. So that created a lot of violence all around Sri Lanka, right? So different cities were taken symbolically to show the spread of ethnic conflict. The situation was very same, not only in Jaffna, but also in Colombo, right? The same violence can be depicted when it comes to Colombo and Jaffna, the main two cities in the country. The situation was very same, not only in Jaffna, but also in Colombo. People were brutally killed. Negative repercussions, or else we call negative effects of this communal clash. Why people were brutally killed? Because of the communal clash, not because of any other reason, not because of terrorism, not because of corona, not because of any other disease. Why people were killed? Because of communal clash. As a result of communal clash, a lot of innocent people were brutally killed. The dead bodies of children and youngsters were lying on the roads. Negative impressions again, right? Communal clash. The poem is discussing about the communal clash and the results of the communal clash. Now, my dear students, I am discussing about the results of the communal clash. The dead bodies of children and youngsters were lying on the roads. Shops were burnt, properties were destroyed, and innocent people were tortured. These are the negative images created by the poetess in our minds, and the best example for racial conflicts, right? And the best examples for racial conflicts. What are the results of the racial conflicts, right? The results of the racial conflicts are given here. Shops were burnt, properties were destroyed, innocent people were tortured, people were brutally killed, a lot of dead bodies can be seen everywhere, nobody is going to recognize them, even the police could not stop the destruction. This is what happened as a result of the communal clash. Now you can prove the fact that they are the negative results of the communal clash. So we can argue the fact that this poem discusses about a communal clash. You started with the history, then you discussed about the results, right? So I have given 2 lines here. We can take a lot of lines from the poem because we have 7 stanzas, right? Out of the Palmyra fences of Jaffna, Bristol 100 guns, shop runs in the Peta, landmarks of our childhood. The other part is in the next slide. So hurry up and write down. Now I am discussing the negative results of the problem, negative results of the communal clash. Hurry up and write down. Please pass me a message after finishing. Right. I hope most of you have finished. So shall we move on from there? Please pass me a message. How many of you are writing? So writing is a must. Okay, because otherwise you will never improve. You have to write fast. That is a skill that you have to improve. Because in the literature paper, you will run out of time. Definitely, I'm pretty sure about that. The last question you can't write with the pressure and everything. Definitely, you will run out of time if you don't practice that. Practice that as well. Time management is very important in literature. You have 2 hours. Within 2 hours, you have to write 4 questions. For one question, at least 2.5 pages, you have to write with 4 quotations. That is a challenge. Huh? That's not easy. Right. Okay. So we will move on. I hope you guys have completed. Right. Anyone who is still writing? Thank you. Right. Okay. So, blood on the khaki uniforms, 3 boys lie dying at the corner of the application road, a child lies dead, a stout man sweating with fear falls to his knees. So, all these examples clearly show us what kind of repercussions, what kind of negative effects actually happen because of the communal clash. All these things are resulted because of the communal clash. I hope you can understand, right? That is why we can refer, this poem is actually discussing about the effects of a communal clash. First and foremost, you have to show them. You have to explain the fact that why the poem is actually, why we are actually arguing the fact that this poem is all about a communal clash. I explained that, right? So the history of the problem I explained. Now after that, what did I do? I showed you the after effects, right? So after this incident, what kind of troubles and tribunals these people face in different scenarios, in different levels, actually, right? So if you go through the poem, 7 stanzas explain about 7 different scenarios, right? I explained you that at the very beginning, if you can remember, I explained you that at the very beginning, right? So now you can understand why this poem is actually based on the communal clash. From the above quotations, the repercussions of the racial conflict is clearly depicted. The weight of the incident is quite brutal. A lot of bloodshedding resulted in the racial violence. Racism, right? Racial violence, it resulted in a lot of bloodshedding. Even the police could not control the situation. At the same time, politicians did not want to, right? The politicians actually want to continue this for a longer period of time because then they can gain maximum advantage from the particular community, right, that they represent. From all the above quotations, the racial conflicts and the results of the incidents are clearly portrayed through the poem, The Big Match 1982. We can bring an argument from all the above quotations. By referring to all the above evidences, we can come to a conclusion saying that this poem is actually discussing about racial violence or else a racial conflict, right? That is what we have to prove. So we have proven that. Before proving that, first and foremost, we have to show that the poem is actually discussing about the racial conflict, the Black July or else the Big Match, the incident which occurred in Black July, why that particular incident actually occurred, who backed up the situation, finally, what were the results? Finally, what were the results, right? Okay, so we are going to finish that poem from there. We are going to start the next question. Hurry up and finish it off. I will give you time. That is fine. Make sure to write. writing is important. Write and finish it off. Then we will go to the next question. Hurry up. Now we have finished this particular poem, right? So now we are going to discuss another question. If you have any questions related to this particular question, please make sure to ask, right? Okay, shall we move on to another question, right? Right, okay, we will move on, right? So we discussed the question related to the big match. I explained you how to write, what kind of idea that you have to have when it comes to this kind of questions, and how to plan your answer. First and foremost, without writing, plan your answer. It will take 10 to 15 minutes. That is totally okay. Take a piece of paper and a pencil and make sure to write down what are the quotations I am going to select. First and foremost, check whether you can remember the quotation. Sometimes because of the exam pressure, at that particular moment, you will forget the quotations, right? If you forgot the quotations, you are done, right? You are done. So first thing is that you have to remember all the quotations. So if you have that problem, make sure to write down the quotations, right? Then you have to have a plan, underline the most important words in the particular question, and then make sure to have a sketch. Then you can write the answer, right? Having a sketch is very much important. It will take some time, but in the long run, it will help you because you will write everything that you know at the end of the day and make sure to go through with the time. If you don't have time management, right, you are not the person who should do literature. Time management is very much important. 4 questions, right? So whatever said and done, whether you are good or not in that particular area, we can only allocate 30 minutes. That's it. Within 30 minutes, you have to go to the next question, whether you have finished or not, whether you have completed the conclusion, whether you have written all the points. We don't care. We have to move on to the next question. Otherwise, within 2 hours, you will write only 1 question, right? So time management is also a skill. Writing fast, right, with proper grammar and pronunciation is a skill that you have to practice, right? You think that I know the poem, I know the background, I can survive. No, writing is there. You have to have that skill. If you don't have that skill, you can't move on. I don't know about the other subjects, but most of the students, they come with the complaint that, sir, I ran out of time, right? So that cannot be happen if you plan your answer and if you manage your time. Let's go to the next question. This is actually Johnson-Nagard, right? Johnson-Nagard reveals the contrast of the social appearance and private life of a celebrity through a modest woman, right? Through a modest woman, right? Now let's read the question again. Johnson-Nagard reveals the contrast of the social appearance. The contrast, right? Contrast can be identified as another important word. Now highlight the words, right? Words are important. What are the words that we have to highlight here? Contrast. Right? This is an important word, contrast of the social and private. Social and private, these 2 words are very important. And celebrity, and we have the modest woman. Basically, we have several words that we have to pay our attention here in this question, right? So we are moving to the next question, right? So now here, right, we have to pay our attention to these words, right? Contrast, social, private, modest woman, celebrity. If you did not understand, if you did not pay your attention to these 4 words, you will start, Clown's Wife is written by Johnson-Nagard. Johnson-Nagard said this, appearance versus reality. Clown is actually performing like this on the stage. Clown is when the clown went his home, he's a different character. No, right? Pay your attention. There are so many things that you have to write. Social and private life, obviously you have to show that. Modest woman, that part also you have to show, right? Contrast, that part also you have to refer. You have to cover everything. Can you understand? But you pay your attention towards social and private life. That is obvious, no, Buddha. When you read the poem, appearance versus reality, that is obvious. Anybody can understand. Most of the students, they do not write about the modest woman. Modest woman. Why we call her as a modest woman? What is the reason? And why we use contrast, right? What is contrast and how contrast is used as a technique? These are the things that you have to pay your attention, right? So as I said, now we have understood the important words. Then we have to go through what are the important things that we have to pay our attention. This is the question now. You can see the question, right? After referring to this question, we have to think what kind of approach rather I should have when it comes to this kind of a question, right? So that is important. Okay, right. What is my approach? The structure of the answer. This is my structure. Check whether you can understand. First and foremost, in the opening paragraph, I have to give the introduction, summary about the poet and the poem. That is a must. Introductory paragraph is a must. I don't have to explain that because more than 1 year you have completed a lot of question papers, lot of term tests. You have faced a lot of term tests. So you know what is an introductory paragraph. I am not going to explain that, right? So second point, the clown is taken as a celebrity, right? Don't forget that word. This word I have taken from the question. Make sure to use the same question in your answer as well. The clown is taken as a celebrity. Social life and private life is depicted through his characteristics. This is the contrast. The clown is taken as a celebrity. His social life and private life is depicted through his characteristics, right? So here's a typo. Make sure to have his. His social life and private life is depicted through his characteristics, right? This is what we call contrast. This is what we call contrast, right? So I have taken 4 quotations. This is what I told you, right? I need 4 quotations to survive. What are the quotations that I need to survive? In the first part, I need to explain about the social life. These are the 2 quotations that I have taken from the social life. On stage, he's a different person. Up there, he's a king on a throne. From the private life, I have a lot to explain, but I have selected 2 quotations. but at home you should hear him moan. He seems to have the world on his shoulder. These are the 4 quotations that I have to prove my answer, right? So by referring to these 2 quotations, I can write a lot, but not the entire answer, because I have write about the modest woman as well. So this is what I call the structure. Without having this structure, you can't write an answer. First and foremost, make sure to have a structure. This will take some time. I'm not going to tell you that you can do it within 10 minutes, 15 minutes. It will take some time. But once you have the structure, then you can write according to the structure. That is important. So hurry up and write down. Right. Now, I told you there are 4 basic points that we have to pay our attention in this question. Social life and private life. Then the contrast. That part is actually explained here. I hope you can understand that part from here. I hope that you have completed this. Then we will move on to the next part. There is another thing that we have to pay our attention. What is that? Modest woman. Right. The entire situation is depicted from clown's wife's perspective. The entire situation is depicted from clown's wife's perspective. She is trying her level best to make him happy. Relevant quotation must be used to show her commitment, which shows us her modesty as well. So not only about the contrast, not only about the social and private life, in the question they have used the word modest woman. So the entire situation is depicted from clown's wife's perspective. She is trying her level best to make him happy. Relevant quotations must be used to show her commitment, which shows us her modesty as well. So everything should be covered. Everything should be covered. Then only we can give marks. We can allocate marks. I hope you can understand. Like this, you can also analyze a question once you write so many questions in literature. That is why we have a paper class. In a theory class, we can't do that because analyzing questions will take a lot of time. Each and every question is a thesis statement. You have to take it as a statement. Then you have to divide that into parts. Right? Then you have to construct your answer by selecting relevant quotations. Can you understand? There is a plan. There should be a proper plan. Even essay writing. Right? Even essay writing. Sinhala language, English language, essay writing, you have essays, right? You don't have any plan. Whatever the ideas that come to your mind, you write. At the end of the day, you don't get marks. What is the reason? The plan is not there. Proper plan is not there. So the teacher says organization 0. Grammar 2 marks. Right? Spelling 1 mark. Organization 0. Why is that? Not properly organized. The answer is not properly organized. So you will never get marks. That is what happens, right? You will never get marks. So hurry up and finish it off. Then we will start the question. Now you know what is the background, right? Now based on this background only we are writing answers. Hurry up and write down. Right, okay. Right. I hope that you guys have completed. Now you have a basic idea what you are going to write. Now we will start the explanation. So first I am going to start with the introductory paragraph. This is my introductory paragraph. So your introductory paragraph can be different from mine. That is totally fine, right? Johnson Maggard is a British playwright, poet, short story and children's writer who won the Paul Hamden Award for Poetry in 1997 and has traveled extensively throughout the world performing his poetry. The Clown's Wife is a poem that examines the theme of appearance versus reality. This is a very common theme in literature. It's the idea that things are not how they appear. This is a very common theme when it comes to literature, right? Although the poem is about the clown, much emphasis is paid on the wife of the clown. This part is very important. This is the question is all about. This is what the question is all about, right? Although the poem is about the clown, much emphasis is paid on the wife of the clown. It is through the voice of the wife the reader looks at the clown. Right, very important. It is through the voice of the wife the reader looks at the clown. It is through the voice of the wife the reader looks at the clown. Though the wife describes the real nature of her husband, her true nature is spontaneously revealed as a devoted wife who is trying her best to cheer her worried and crestfallen husband. Even though the wife is explaining about the husband, the clown, when she explains about the incident spontaneously, naturally, we will get to know that she is a modest woman. She is a woman who sacrificed herself in order to make her husband happy. She is a modest woman. She is a devoted woman. She is a woman who is ready to commit herself for the betterment of the husband. that part is also revealed spontaneously. What are the basic things that you have to remember? Even though the poem is about a clown, spontaneously, the clown's wife's character will also come into consideration. We have to talk about that as well, whether we like it or not. That is the reality, right? So hurry up and write down. This is my introductory paragraph. Today, introductory paragraph can be different. You don't have to write the exact introductory paragraph, right? So you don't have to give all these years and dates and all these things, right? A simple introductory paragraph will do, right? Don't think that you have to also write this much of. No. You don't have, right? You don't have to do like that. Anybody can understand, right? So that is up to you. Right, okay. I hope that you guys have completed. Others, please pass me a message. Yeah, you can, Sumaya, you can. What do you call in the structure of the poem and everything you can, but it is not essential, right? The most essential things that you have to include in the introductory paragraph about the poet and some kind of summary about the poem. The structure and the words, diction, simile, metaphor, all these things also you can remember about the time as well, right? Some students, they write like 25 to 30 lines for the introductory paragraph. Then what will happen? Actually, they don't have time to explain the question, right? So that will be another problem. So don't do like that. That is also important. Right, okay. So we will move on. Is there anyone who is still writing? Please pass me a message. Hurry up. Right, okay. Right. So we will start. Contrast is, now I'm going to start with the contrast, right? Because we should not forget that word I told you. Contrast is utilized as a powerful poetic technique by Agar to reveal the social reality. The clown is known to be the king of the stage when he performs his acts. The attention and the attraction of the entire audience was stolen by him. He is that much talented in his professional life. This is what his social life is being presented by the wife. To quote from the text, this is how wife is actually presented his social life. Now we directly use that word because that is the word that we found in the question, right? So contrast. On stage, he is a different person. Up there, he is a king on a throne. Right? So now you can understand what kind of valuability and validity is given to him by the society. He's a real character when it comes to his profession. He performs really well, right? He steals the audience, right? The attraction and the attention of the audience. So he is actually directly compared to a king. Now, when it comes to a king, right, you know what kind of authority is actually given to him. If the entire audience can be taken as the entire country is actually ruled by the clown. If you compare the entire audience to a country, who is the ruler of the country? The ruler of the country is king. So if the entire audience is the country, you can refer to the clown as the king. So that much of importance is given to him. He steals the crowd, right? So he has that talent. He is that much talented person. On stage, he is a different person. Up there, he is a king on a throne. According to wife, same happiness and enthusiasm can't be recognized when he entered his home. He is represented as a lethargic, exhausted man who lost the purpose of life. This is what we call contrast, right? Now, soon after he came to the house, the same enthusiasm, the same interest cannot be seen, right? He becomes a lethargic, exhausted person who lost the purpose of life. This is what we call contrast. His private life is a tragedy. According to wife, right? Because all these ideas we have to understand according to the perspective of wife, because she is the one who gives us the explanation. Even as the audience, we try to understand everything from her perspective. Don't forget that, right? We try to understand everything from her perspective, right? So this is what we can realize. According to wife, same happiness and enthusiasm can't be recognized when he entered his home. He is represented as a lethargic, exhausted man who lost the purpose of life. This is what we call contrast. His private life is a tragedy. His private life is a tragedy, right? According to wife. Okay, so we will wind up the session from there, right? You can write this down and you can leave the session. So your next class will be on Saturday. So make sure to participate for that one. Paper class will continue, right? So we will continue this question and we will continue the other questions as well. If you completed certain questions, make sure to convert that to a PDF and send that to me. I will definitely comment on that. Make sure to send your answers. I'm always looking forward to give you a comment about your answer, right? You can continue this answer from here as well if you like, right? So make sure to write. The more you write, you will improve, right? The only secret when it comes to literature, the more you write, you will improve. That is what happens. Okay, so we will wind up the session from there. Thank you so much for joining. If you have finished, you can leave the meeting. Thank you so much. We will meet next week. Good night.